Contrast mammography is one of the techniques that I feel passionate about since I have been working on it since its very beginning. It was only possible once we switched to digital mammography. We could not do it with film mammography. But the key is that in addition to getting a mammogram, we put an IV in and we inject a contrast agent. It's the same contrast agent that we would use for a CT scan if you were to get a CT scan with contrast. And by doing that, it makes the cancers light up and they become much more visible. It's very similar to another test that you may have heard of, which is contrast-enhanced breast MRI. And that test has been around longer, so is more in use, but they have the same principles. They both require an injection, and the injection is what makes cancers light up. Mammography itself is very good at screening for breast cancer, but it doesn't find every cancer. And in women who are at high risk, we want to do more testing, and contrast-enhanced mammography is one way we can see cancers that we couldn't see on a regular mammogram. In multiple studies, CEM outperforms regular mammography, and even if you add ultrasound to the mammography, CEM will outperform it. The contrast makes cancers show up that you just can't see on a mammogram, and often you cannot see on ultrasound. It's very similar to the way we find things on MRI that we do not find with screening mammography or screening ultrasound. The indications for CEM are still being worked out, but some of the possibilities include screening women who are at higher risk for breast cancer than the average woman. And the things that make you at higher risk are having a family history of breast cancer and dense breast tissue. And because CEM is lower cost than MRI, it could probably be used on a wider range of women than MRI. We reserve MRI for the highest risk patients because of its cost. The other important applications would be problem solving for cases where mammography and ultrasound don't give you the final answer that you want. And it can be used for staging breast cancer. We stage breast cancer now sometimes with MRI, but other times we stage only with regular mammography and ultrasound. Contrast mammography gives us another way to make sure there's not another cancer in either breast. You would have to combine it with ultrasound to look at the axilla if you want to have complete staging, but otherwise contrast mammography plus ultrasound of the axilla would be able to replace MRI for staging. The sensitivity of CEM is very similar to that of MRI. It varies from study to study. Some of the studies actually show CEM to have a higher sensitivity than MRI, but others show MRI to have a slightly higher sensitivity. In a meta-analysis of all the studies published, the sensitivity of CEM was 95%. And unfortunately, the meta-analysis didn't include comparison to MRI, but we know that the sensitivity of MRI is around that, 95%, maybe in some studies 97%. It depends what all you count. CEM in some ways will have a higher sensitivity because it includes a regular mammogram, so therefore you're also finding calcifications. We typically do MRI with regular mammography to get the highest sensitivity. CEM replaces both the MRI and the mammogram. And as I said, it has about a sensitivity of 95% in a meta-analysis of all the studies. The advantage of CEM is that you can see cancers that you won't see on a regular mammogram and you may not see on ultrasound. Certainly not with screening ultrasound. So that's really where the advantage comes in. Compared to MRI, CEM has the advantage of being lower cost. The equipment is just a regular mammography unit with slight modifications, as opposed to an MRI unit, which requires an expensive purchase and some siting. The exam itself is relatively short. It's about a 5-minute exam, whereas a standard MRI can be 20 to 40 minutes. So those are the big advantages. The disadvantages of CEM are just the need to put in an IV and to inject contrast. Contrast is generally safe, but there's a small percentage of people who will have some kind of reaction to the contrast, some sort of allergic reaction. A serious reaction is very rare, but minor reactions are common. But the main downside is just having to come and get an IV placed and have the injection.